You are golden, you are good enough, like your fire from within. You're inspired, you inspire us. It's gonna be all good again.
Welcome back to the Roar Indie Author interview series. I'm your host, Brianna, and I'm also this week's featured guest. When Penny Eifrig said that she wanted someone to do the podcast, I jumped at the opportunity because literacy is a topic near and dear to my heart. Diversity in books is a huge passion of mine. Creating a better world for our children and a more empathetic and compassionate world is something that I think that we can all do. And so by talking to other authors who are on that same journey, I feel very privileged and honored to be a part of this mission. And my story resonates and is very similar with a lot of the other authors we've had a chance to talk to this season. When I found out I was pregnant, I looked around and I didn't see any books that really captured my childhood or the way I grew up and the diverse people that I was friends with and the way the world is shaped. And I wanted to bring that to my son. As a white boy, seeing white books all the time, having white dolls, I just wanted him to understand that there's all kinds of people who live in the world and they have all kinds of histories and cultures that are very rich and beautiful and dynamic. And I wanted to showcase that in my book. So once I found I was pregnant, I had the story in my head for years, and he was the one who finally inspired me to put it on paper. And the book is called Positively Penelope, A Day at the Races, and Penny is a little different. She is a differently abled individual. She uses a wheelchair to move about the world, and that is, again, something that's really important to me, is understanding that we might be different, but we are equally capable in our own way. And our capabilities and the way we engage with the world look differently, but that doesn't mean they're right or wrong or normal or abnormal. They just are. And I wanted to bring that to light as well, because I feel like my childhood was very segregated from anybody who had an intellectual disability or who was neurodiverse or who was physically diverse. And there's much more integration in the school systems, generally speaking. And I wanted to kind of highlight that you can do anything you put your mind to. And we all have hurdles in life. Penny's is a wheelchair, so she navigates the world differently. That's not necessarily a hurdle or an obstacle. It's a different way to move about the world. It doesn't mean she's any less capable. So it's really important for me to highlight this. One, having illness that impacts my family directly, and having someone who has multiple sclerosis, whose life journey will change towards the end, and also watching one of my best friends and her sister navigate the world in a wheelchair, I just thought was really, really inspiring. Like, and all the things that she does and do, and how in my naivete, I didn't know that that was possible for someone in a wheelchair. So I learned and I grew and I understand more about a dynamic group of people who can do things. And that's really just broadened my horizons and my life and has really taught me a lot about humanity in general. What I admire most about my book and the characters is Penny is a lot like me and her inner struggles. So I brought a lot of my personality and my personal experience to her character in a different way. But it's really like Jimmy, who's the unsung hero and who is the voice of reason and and kind of like makes Penny remember who she is and that she's capable, because we all have moments of doubt. And if we all had a friend like Jimmy, well, the world would be a much better place. I'm working on my second book. This is a follow-up to Positively Penelope. It's written, it just needs to be edited. So I'll be looking forward to sharing that hopefully later this year in 2023. And for me, what makes being part of Roar such an incredible experience is just the dynamic writers that are involved, people who saw a gap, who wanted to change the narrative, who were inspired by their own lives or their own children, and who saw a need for something, for stories that weren't being told, and to share these different visions and these different perspectives, and those that brought different cultural nuances to stories and characters, and showing a diversity of color and hair and capabilities, I think is really important for our kids in general, to understand that people aren't always going to look like us. They're not going to have the same beliefs. And you hear it through the podcast if you're listening in. We talk about what my 5-year-old or nearly 5-year-old, the questions he's asking. So to have those books accessible so he can learn about a Chinese New Year and how it's different from Lunar New Year's in other cultures, or having, a Black boy be the main character of a story, and having an Indian child or a Southeast Asian child be the center of a story, I think is so empowering, because the world is such a dynamic place and it has so much room for all these different cultures. And then you can be informed and you can ask intelligent questions. And if you don't understand like what a sari is, or a burqa is, or a hijab, you can ask these questions and get answers. And it doesn't need to be rude or disrespectful. It can purely be curious. So I think that having so many unique perspectives in Roar, and being able to talk to all these authors and understand their own motivations and their desires and their inspirations has been such a really cool experience. It also makes me feel less alone in a world that can seem very conflicted and at odds, coming together with all these people from all over and seeing this common goal of let's spread good stories about awesome people and celebrate our differences. It makes me feel that, we're more alike than different, and that by embracing our differences and appreciating what makes us unique, we can really change the world. What would I say as advice for an inspiring or an aspiring writer? Well, do it, edit it, and do it again. And it's okay to hit delete on one of the best sentences you've ever written. A babysitter of mine told me that. He was also a writer, and I thought it was the most brilliant piece of advice I'd ever heard. Sometimes your best sentence is the one you need to take out, and that's really hard when we're writing. And it's okay to delete and start over. Editing is your friend, and just getting the words down is the most important thing. So if you're going to write something you don't know about, as I did for Penelope, I don't know what it's like to be in a wheelchair, get the perspective, ask the questions, don't be afraid to do the research, and don't be afraid to have someone read it who might tell you it's awful, because your story is only going to get better from there. So that's exactly what I did for my book. That's what I would recommend. If you're ever looking for me, you can find me at mamaknowsnada.com. There's links to Penelope. You can go to positivelypenelope.com if you're interested in my book. But if you want to know more about me, this podcast, anything like that, it's Mama Knows Nada. And don't forget to follow Random Acts of Reading Roar on Instagram at Random Acts of Reading Roar, because that's where all the information is. randomactsofreading.org. If you want to find out more about this podcast or any of the authors that we have chatted with throughout this whole endeavor, that's where you can find us. So I just hope that everyone out there is enjoying reading and writing, and keep at it, because you never know where it's going to take you. You don't have to read.